The deep mining tunnels of New Sol Colony stretched far beneath the surface of Kepler 442b. Dr. Minho Park adjusted his headlamp and checked the air readings on his scanner. The crystalline caves always made him nervous, but today felt different. Something was wrong. "Captain Kim, are you getting these energy readings too?" Minho spoke into his comm device. His voice echoed off the glowing crystal walls that surrounded him. Captain Gina Kim's voice crackled back through the static. "Yes, I see them. Whatever crashed down there is big, and it's still giving off power." She paused. "I'm bringing a full security team." Minho had been studying alien artifacts for 12 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The energy patterns on his scanner looked almost alive. They pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and steady. He moved deeper into the cave system, following the signal. The tunnel opened into a massive cavern. Minho stopped and stared. A ship sat in the middle of the space, half buried in fallen rocks and crystal formations. The hull was smooth and dark, made from a material he did not recognize. Strange symbols glowed along its sides with a soft blue light. "Gina, you need to see this," Minho whispered into his comm. 20 minutes later, Captain Kim arrived with her security team. Sergeant Kyung and Private Yuna spread out around the ship while Kim and Minho approached the main hull. "I've never seen anything like this design," Kim said. She ran her gloved hand along the smooth surface. "Look at these symbols. They're not in any database we have." The ship was about the size of a small transport vessel, but it was built for speed rather than cargo. Minho found what looked like an entrance hatch. The symbols around it were brighter than the others, and they seemed to respond to his presence. "It's trying to communicate," he said. "Or maybe it recognizes that we're intelligent life." Kim nodded to her team. They took defensive positions while she and Minho worked to open the hatch. After several minutes of studying the symbols, Minho pressed his palm against a glowing panel. The hatch opened with a soft hiss. The air that escaped smelled strange, like ozone after lightning. Emergency lighting flickered on inside the ship, casting red shadows on the walls. Kim drew her weapon and stepped inside first. "Clear," she called out after checking the main corridor. The ship's interior was cramped but efficient. Minho noticed that everything was built for beings about human size, maybe slightly smaller. They moved through the corridor, checking each room they passed. The first room they entered made Kim curse under her breath. 3 alien bodies lay on the floor. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and elongated heads. Their clothes looked like some kind of uniform or armor. Each one had been killed by energy weapons. "Guards," Kim said, examining the bodies. "Look at their equipment." The aliens carried weapons and restraint devices. Their uniforms had the same symbols as the ship, but in different colors. Minho took readings with his scanner. "They've been dead for about 6 hours," he said. "Whatever happened here, it happened recently." They continued deeper into the ship. The next room they found was different. It looked like a holding cell. Heavy restraints were built into the walls and scorch marks covered the floor. But this cell was empty. "Someone was being held here," Kim said. She examined the restraints. "These weren't designed for the gray aliens. Look at the size." The restraints were smaller, built for someone about the size of a human child. Energy burns around the lock showed that whoever had been held here had escaped with considerable force. "Captain," Private Yuna's voice came through their comms. "You need to see this end of the corridor." They found Yuna standing outside another room. This one was different from the others. It was larger and had windows that looked out at the cave. Inside they could see movement. Kim approached carefully, her weapon ready. Minho stayed close behind her with his scanner active. They entered the room slowly. In the corner, huddled behind a piece of furniture, was a small figure. It looked up at them with large, luminous eyes that seemed to hold starlight. The being was clearly young, about the size of a human child. Its skin was a pale blue color that seemed to glow softly from within. The child alien made a soft sound, like a whimper. It pressed itself further into the corner, clearly afraid. But Minho noticed something strange on his scanner. The energy readings were coming from this small being. "It's okay," Minho said softly. He put away his scanner and held up his empty, Hands. We're not going to hurt you. The child tilted its head, studying them. It had a humanoid face, but with features that were more delicate than human. Its eyes were the most striking feature, large and expressive, filled with intelligence and fear. Kim slowly lowered her weapon. "It's just a kid," she said quietly. The child seemed to understand that they meant no harm. It stood up slowly, revealing that it was wearing a simple gray garment that looked like a prison uniform. Around its ankles were broken energy shackles. Minho approached very slowly. "Can you understand us?" he asked. The child nodded slightly. It pointed to itself and made a sound that was musical, like wind chimes. Then it pointed to the dead guards in the other room and made a different sound, harsh and full of pain. It was a prisoner, Kim realized. Those gray aliens were taking it somewhere. The child suddenly stiffened. It looked toward the ship's entrance with fear in its eyes. Its skin began to glow brighter, and Minho's comm device started to crackle with static. "What's happening?" Kim asked. Before Minho could answer, all the electronic equipment in the room began to malfunction. Lights flickered, scanners shut down, and their comm devices went dead. The energy was coming from the child, but it didn't seem to be doing it on purpose. The child looked at them with panic in its eyes. It was trying to speak, making urgent sounds and gestures. Finally, it managed to say one word in broken human language: weapon. Kim and Minho looked at each other. The pieces were starting to come together. This child had been taken from somewhere and was being transported as some kind of weapon. But looking at the small, frightened being in front of them, neither of them could see it as a threat. "We need to get it back to the colony," Kim said. "It needs medical attention and a safe place." As they prepared to leave the ship, Minho found the vessel's data logs. What he saw there would change everything they thought they knew about their small rescue. The child wasn't just any alien. According to the logs, it was something much more important. And the beings who had taken it weren't done with their plans. 3 days had passed since they found the alien child in the crashed ship. The colony's medical bay had become the child's temporary home. Dr. Minho Park sat beside the small bed, watching as the young alien tried to eat human food for the first time. The child had learned to say a few words in their language. It called itself something that sounded like singing, but the closest human translation was Hanul, which meant sky. The name seemed to fit perfectly. "Hanul likes the fruit," said Sunmi Lee, the colony's teacher. She had been spending hours each day with the child, helping it learn basic words and human customs. "Look how it examines each piece before eating." Hanul held up a piece of apple and studied it carefully. The child's large eyes could see things humans could not. Sometimes it would point at empty air and make excited sounds, as if watching invisible lights dance around them. Captain Gina Kim entered the medical bay with a worried expression. "We have a problem," she said quietly. "Colonel Hyun Cho arrived from Earth Command an hour ago. He wants to see the child." Minho felt his stomach tighten. Earth Command meant military. Military meant they saw Hanul as either a threat or a tool to be used. "What does he want?" Sunmi asked. "He has orders to transfer Hanul to a research facility on Earth," Kim replied. "He says the child is too dangerous to keep here." Hanul looked up at them. The child could not understand all their words yet, but it could sense their emotions. Its skin began to glow softly, a sign that it was becoming upset. "No," Hanul said in its musical voice. "No go. Stay here." Colonel Cho walked into the medical bay at that moment. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. He wore the dark blue uniform of Earth Command and carried himself like someone used to being obeyed. "This is the alien?" he asked, looking at Hanul with suspicion. Hanul pressed closer to Minho and made a soft whimpering sound. The lights in the room began to flicker as the child's emotions affected the electrical systems. "Colonel, you're scaring it," Minho said. "Hanul has been through terrible trauma. It needs care, not more fear." Colonel Cho pulled out a data pad and began reading. "According to the ship's logs you recovered, this being was being transported as a weapon prototype. The aliens who took it planned to use it against human colonies. But look at it, Sunmi," said. This is a child. It's gentle and curious and afraid. How could anyone think of it as a weapon? Because of this, Colonel Cho said. He showed them video footage from the colony's security cameras. It showed the moment when Hanul had accidentally shut down all the electronics in the ship. One frightened moment and it disabled every piece of technology around it. What happens when it gets angry? What happens when it grows up? Hanul tugged on Minho's sleeve. What is weapon? The child asked in broken human speech. The adults fell silent. How could they explain such a concept to someone so young and innocent? Weapon is something that hurts people, Minho said gently. But you are not a weapon. You are a person. Colonel Cho shook his head. It's too dangerous. Earth Command has facilities that can study it safely. We need to understand its abilities before deciding what to do with it. Its name is Hanul, Kim said firmly. And we are not sending a traumatized child to be experimented on. This is not a democracy, Captain, Colonel Cho replied. I have my orders. That evening, the colony's council held an emergency meeting. Minho, Kim, and Sunmi sat around the table with Administrator Wu and Engineer Donghae Lim. The question before them was simple but life-changing. We cannot let them take Hanul, Sunmi said. The child has started to trust us. Taking it away now would destroy any progress we've made. Engineer Lim nodded. I've been working with Hanul on controlling its energy abilities. The child responds well to calm guidance. Fear and stress make the power surges worse. But Colonel Cho has a point, Administrator Wu said reluctantly. What if the child becomes dangerous as it grows? What if other aliens come looking for it? Then we deal with those problems when they happen, Kim said. Right now we have a scared child who needs a family, not a laboratory. Minho stood up. I propose that we formally request to adopt Hanul as a ward of the colony. We can provide the care and education it needs while studying its abilities in a safe, non-threatening way. Earth Command will never agree to that, Administrator Wu said. Then we make them agree, Kim replied. We document everything. We show them that Hanul is safer and more stable when treated with kindness instead of fear. The next morning, Colonel Cho found the colony united against him. Every adult signed a petition requesting that Hanul remain on New Seoul under their protection. Even the miners and technicians who had never met the child supported the decision. This is foolish sentiment, Colonel Cho told them. You are letting emotion cloud your judgment. Maybe, Minho said. But emotion is what makes us human, and it's what Hanul needs to heal. As if summoned by their conversation, Hanul appeared in the doorway. The child had been staying with Sunmi, learning human customs and language. It walked up to Colonel Cho without fear. You are scared of me, Hanul said in careful human words. I am scared too. But Minho and Sunmi and Gina teach me that scared is okay. Scared means we care about something. Colonel Cho stared down at the small alien child. What do you care about? I care about my new family, Hanul said, gesturing to the humans around it. They are kind to me. They teach me good things. I want to learn how to be good too. Something in the colonel's expression softened slightly. But before he could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the colony. Emergency lights flashed red as the warning system activated. What's happening? Kim shouted over the noise. Engineer Lim ran into the room, his face pale with panic. Long-range sensors just detected something, he said. Ships are coming. Alien ships, and they're heading straight for us. Hanul's skin began to glow brightly. The child looked up at the adults with wide, frightened eyes. They come for me, Hanul whispered. They want to take me back. In that moment, Colonel Cho made a decision that would change everything. Instead of seeing Hanul as a weapon or a threat, he saw what the colonists had seen all along. A child in need of protection. How long until they arrive? He asked. 6 hours, Lim replied. Colonel Cho looked at Hanul, then at the colonists who had chosen to protect the child. Then we have 6 hours to prepare, and when those ships arrive, they'll find that Hanul has something the kidnappers never gave it. What's that? Minho asked. A family willing to fight for it. 5 years had passed since that frightening day when alien ships approached New Sol Colony. Those ships had brought unexpected joy instead of danger. They carried Hanul's people, the Veiltar, who had been searching desperately for their lost child. Now Hanul sat by the crystal lake near the colony, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. The alien child had grown taller and stronger, but still kept the gentle nature that had won over the human colonists. "Hanul, breakfast is ready," called Dr. Minho Park from the colony's main building. He and teacher Sunmi Lee had married 3 years ago and officially adopted Hanul as their child. The young Veiltar now had a real human family. Hanul smiled and ran toward the building. The child moved with grace that seemed almost like floating. Other colonists waved and called out greetings as Hanul passed. The young alien had become everyone's favorite. In the dining hall, Hanul found friends Jiho Kang and Yunha Seo waiting at their usual table. Jiho was the son of the colony administrator, while Yunha was training to become an engineer like Donghae Lim. "Did you finish the energy project?" Jiho asked, as Hanul sat down with a plate of fruit and grain cakes. "Yes, I think so," Hanul replied, in perfect human speech. "But I want to test it more before showing Engineer Lim." Over the years, Hanul had learned to control the energy abilities that once caused fear. The child could now direct power precisely, helping repair broken equipment or charging batteries. More importantly, Hanul had taught the humans to see energy patterns in ways their science was just beginning to understand. "Show us," Yunha said excitedly. Hanul looked around to make sure no adults were watching, then held up a small device. It was a light projector that had stopped working the day before. Hanul placed gentle fingers on its surface and closed those large luminous eyes in concentration. The device began to glow softly. Then it projected a beautiful pattern of lights that danced in the air above their table. The lights moved like living things, forming shapes of flowers and birds and distant stars. "Amazing," Jiho whispered. "How do you do that?" "I ask the energy to remember what it wants to be," Hanul explained. "Everything has energy inside. I just help it find the right path." Their conversation was interrupted when Captain Gina Kim entered the dining hall with a serious expression. She had been promoted to head of colonial relations and often handled communications with other worlds. "Hanul, your parents want to see you in the communications center," Kim said. "We're receiving a priority message from deep space." Hanul's expression grew worried. Priority messages usually meant something important had happened. The young Veiltar followed Kim through the colony's corridors to the communications center. Dr. Park and Sunmi were already there, along with Colonel Cho, who had become a trusted friend over the years. The large screen showed the familiar face of High Regent Velthara, Hanul's biological mother. The Veiltar leader looked tired and concerned. Her translucent blue skin seemed dimmer than usual, and her voice carried worry when she spoke. "My child," she said, "I bring news that may change everything. Our long-range scouts have discovered something troubling." Hanul stepped closer to the screen. "What is wrong, Mother Velthara?" "The rogue faction that took you years ago, the ones we thought were destroyed. Some of them survived. They have been hiding in the dark regions between star systems, growing stronger." Colonel Cho leaned forward. "How is that possible? Your people said the Devourers were completely eliminated." "We were wrong," High Regent Velthara admitted. "They have built new ships and recruited others to their cause. Our intelligence suggests they are planning something terrible." Dr. Park put his hand on Hanul's shoulder. "What do they want?" "The same thing they always wanted," the High Regent replied. "They want Hanul. They believe my child is the key to creating a weapon that can drain the life from entire worlds." Hanul shivered, despite the warm air in the communications center. "But I would never help them hurt people. They do not plan to ask for your cooperation," High Regent Velthara said sadly. "They have developed new technology, ways to force Veiltar abilities to work against our will." Sunmi moved closer to Hanul protectively. "Then Hanul stays here, where we can keep the child safe." "I wish it were that simple," the High Regent continued. "But they are not just coming for Hanul. They plan to attack human colonies to draw my child out. They know Hanul cares about humans now. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this terrible news. Hanul had found peace and happiness on New Sol, but now that peace was threatened. How long do we have? Kim asked. Perhaps 2 months before they reach this sector of space, High Regent Velthera replied. I am sending a protection fleet, but they may not arrive in time. Hanul stood quietly for a moment, thinking. Over the years, the young Veltar had learned not just human customs, but human courage as well. I will not hide while innocent people are threatened because of me, Hanul said firmly. There must be something we can do. Colonel Cho nodded approvingly. The child has grown wise. What do you propose, Hanul? I have been learning about both human and Veltar ways of thinking, Hanul replied. Maybe together we can find a solution that neither of our peoples could discover alone. Over the next few days, Hanul worked with the colony's best minds to understand the threat they faced. Engineer Lim helped analyze Veltar technology, while Dr. Park studied the biological aspects of energy manipulation. Teacher Sunmi researched historical examples of similar conflicts. What they discovered was both frightening and hopeful. The Devourers had indeed found ways to weaponize Veltar abilities, but their technology had a weakness. It relied on fear and anger to amplify power, making it unstable and dangerous even to its users. They still think of me as the frightened child they kidnapped, Hanul explained to the assembled colonists. But I am not that child anymore. I have learned things they cannot understand. What kind of things? Jiho asked. Hanul smiled, and for a moment the young alien looked very human. I have learned that love is stronger than fear. I have learned that protecting others gives more power than trying to control them. Most importantly, I have learned that family is not about where you come from, but about who chooses to stand with you. As if summoned by these words, alerts began sounding throughout the colony. Long-range sensors had detected ships approaching faster than expected. They're here, Kim announced grimly. 3 large vessels, unknown configuration. They'll be in orbit within hours. Hanul looked around at all the humans who had become family over the past 5 years. Dr. Park and Sunmi, who had given love and guidance. Colonel Cho, who had learned to see past his fears. Captain Kim, who had always protected the colony. Friends like Jiho and Yunha, who had shared laughter and learning. Then it is time to show them what I have truly become, Hanul said with quiet determination. Not a weapon, but something much more powerful. A bridge between worlds, protected by 2 families who will not let anyone break that bridge. The final confrontation was about to begin, but this time Hanul would not face it as a helpless prisoner. This time, the young Veltar had something the Devourers could never understand or defeat, the unshakable love of a chosen family. The sky above New Sol colony turned silver as the first Veltar ship descended through the atmosphere. High Regent Velthara had arrived ahead of the protection fleet, bringing only her personal vessel and a small diplomatic team. Hanul stood in the landing area, watching the graceful ship touch down on the crystalline surface. The young Veltar felt nervous energy building in the air around them. It had been 5 years since seeing others of their own species. The ship's hatch opened with a sound like singing crystal. High Regent Velthara stepped out, her tall form moving with the same fluid grace that Hanul had inherited. But where Hanul's skin glowed with warmth and contentment, the High Regent's blue translucence flickered with worry and grief. My child, Velthara said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Hanul approached slowly. The reunion felt strange after so many years among humans. Mother Velthara, you look tired. The search for you, then the war. With the Devourers, and now this new threat, the High Regent replied. It has been difficult, but seeing you alive and well brings joy to my heart. Dr. Park and Sunmi stood nearby with the other colonists. They had prepared for this moment, but it still felt awkward. How do you greet the biological parent of your adopted child when that parent is an alien ruler? High Regent, Dr. Park said formally. Welcome to New Sol. We are honored by your presence. Velthara studied the humans with curious eyes. You are the ones who cared for my child when I could not. The debt of the Veiltar people to you cannot be measured. Over the following days, an unusual cultural exchange began. High Regent Velthara had brought Veiltar scholars and advisors who were fascinated by human society. At the same time, the colonists eagerly learned about Veiltar technology and philosophy. But the reunion between Hanul and their biological mother proved more complicated than anyone expected. You have changed greatly, Velthara observed as she and Hanul walked beside the crystal lake. Your energy patterns are unlike any Veiltar I have known. I learned human ways, Hanul replied simply. They taught me about choice and friendship and making my own path. These are not traditional Veiltar concepts, the High Regent said with concern. Our people value collective harmony over individual desires. We follow the paths laid down by our ancestors. Hanul stopped walking and turned to face their biological mother. But what if the old paths lead to the wrong places? The Devourers followed traditional Veiltar thinking when they decided I should be a weapon. Velthara was quiet for a long moment. You speak wisdom beyond your years. Perhaps that is what we truly need now. Meanwhile, in the colony's research center, Engineer Lim worked alongside Veiltar technicians to understand the approaching threat. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The Devourer ships use a twisted version of Veiltar energy manipulation, explained Kethara, one of the Veiltar scientists. They drain life force from their targets to power their weapons. Captain Kim studied the technical readouts. How do we fight something like that? Traditional Veiltar methods have failed, Kethara admitted. The Devourers use our own strength against us. The more energy we use to fight them, the more they can steal and turn into weapons. Colonel Cho frowned at the display screens. Then, we need non-traditional methods. What about human tactics combined with Veiltar abilities? That might work, Engineer Lim said thoughtfully. Our weapons don't rely on life energy. And if Hanul could channel power through human technology instead of traditional Veiltar methods? As they worked on defensive plans, Hanul spent time showing the Veiltar visitors around the colony. Jiho and Yuna joined them, eager to meet aliens for the first time. Your human friends are quite remarkable, observed Zenara, a young Veiltar who served as High Regent Velthara's assistant. They show no fear of us, even though we must seem very strange. Humans are good at accepting differences, Hanul explained. They taught me that being different can make you stronger, not weaker. Yuna nodded enthusiastically. Hanul shows us energy patterns we never knew existed. It's like seeing colors that were always there but invisible before. This is not the Veiltar way, Zenara said uncertainly. We keep our abilities within our own people. Why? Jiho asked with typical human directness. If sharing knowledge helps everyone, isn't that better than keeping it secret? Zenara had no answer for that question. Like many Veiltar the young, assistant had never considered that their traditional ways might not always be the best ways. These philosophical discussions were interrupted when long-range sensors detected the approaching Devourer fleet. 3 massive ships, larger than anything the Veiltar or humans had ever built, were heading straight for New Sol. They will be here in 18 hours, reported Captain Kim during an emergency meeting. Our defense systems are not designed to handle ships that size. High Regent Velthara stood before the assembled colonists in Veiltar. I must be honest with you. These Devourers are more dangerous than we first understood. They are no longer entirely Veiltar. What do you mean? Dr. Park asked. They have been experimenting on themselves, Velthara explained with disgust. Mixing Veiltar abilities with technology from other species they have conquered. They have become something twisted and unnatural. Hanul stepped forward. Then we must become something new as well, something they cannot predict or understand. What do you propose? Colonel Cho asked. I propose we stop thinking like separate species, Hanul said with growing confidence. Humans have courage and creativity that Veiltar lack. Veiltar have energy abilities that humans cannot match. But together we might have something the Devourers have never encountered. A true alliance. High Regent Velthara said slowly. Not just cooperation, but genuine unity of purpose. Engineer Lim was already working on his datapad. If we could integrate Veiltar energy manipulation with human defensive systems, we might be able to turn their own weapon against them. It would require perfect coordination, Captain Kim noted, and complete trust between our peoples. Hanno looked around the room at both humans and Veiltar. 5 years ago, I was a frightened prisoner who could not control my own abilities. These humans gave me a family and taught me that strength comes from love, not fear. Now my Veiltar family has returned to help protect that human family. The young alien's skin began to glow with warm, steady light. The Devourers still think I am a weapon to be captured or controlled. They do not understand that I have become something they never expected. I am a bridge between worlds, and bridges are much stronger than weapons. High Regent Velthara felt something she had not experienced in decades. Hope. Then let us build this bridge strong enough to stand against any storm. As the Devourer ships drew closer, humans and Veiltar worked together with desperate urgency. They had less than 1 day to prepare for a battle that would determine not just the fate of New Sol Colony, but the future of both their species. The final confrontation was approaching, and this time, it would be fought not by weapons alone, but by the power of 2 worlds united in defense of family. The 3 Devourer ships hung in space above New Sol like dark storms ready to strike. Their hulls were twisted and wrong, covered with growths that pulsed with stolen life energy. They were larger than anything the colonists had ever seen, and they radiated hunger. In the colony's command center, Hanul stood between their 2 families. Dr. Park and Sunmi flanked one side, while High Regent Velthara stood on the other. Around them, humans and Veiltar worked together at control stations, preparing for a battle unlike any in history. They are trying to communicate, reported Captain Kim from her position at the communications array. Put them through, Colonel Cho ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a being that had once been Veiltar but was now something horrible. Its skin was mottled gray and black, with mechanical implants grafted directly into its flesh. Its eyes burned with unnatural fire. I am war leader Kreshtok of the Devourer fleet. The creature spoke in a voice like grinding metal. Return the weapon, child, to us, and we will make your deaths quick. Hanul stepped forward, no longer the frightened prisoner of years ago. I am not a weapon. I am Hanul of New Sol Colony, child of 2 worlds and defender of both. Kreshtok laughed, a sound that made the air itself feel sick. You are what we made you to be, a tool for draining worlds of life. Come willingly, or we will take you from the ashes of your human pets. You made nothing, High Regent Velthara said with cold anger. You stole a child and planned to corrupt it, but love proved stronger than your cruelty. Love is weakness, Kreshtok snarled. Power is all that matters. We will show you the truth of power. The transmission ended, and immediately the Devourer ships began their attack. Beams of dark energy lanced down toward the colony, seeking to drain the life from everything they touched. But the colonists were ready. Hanel placed their hands on a crystal array that Engineer Lim had built, combining human technology with Veiltar energy manipulation. As the dark beams struck the colony's shields, Hanel channeled them away, turning the death energy back into harmless light. It's working, Yuna shouted from her position at the power monitors. The shields are holding. Phase 2, Colonel Cho ordered. Human ships launched from hidden positions around the planet. They were small and fast, designed not to fight the massive Devourer vessels directly, but to confuse and distract them. Meanwhile, Veiltar energy warriors aboard the human ships prepared for something that had never been attempted before. Jiho, are you ready? Hanul called out to their friend who was piloting one of the human fighters. Ready? Jiho's voice came back through the communication system. This had better work. Hanul closed their eyes and reached out with abilities that had grown far beyond traditional Veiltar limits. Instead of manipulating energy alone, Hanul connected with the emotions and thoughts of the human pilots. The young alien became a bridge, allowing Veiltar energy workers to guide human weapons with impossible precision. The result was beautiful and terrifying. Human ships danced through space with Veiltar grace, their weapons striking weak points that only energy sight could reveal. The Devourer ships designed to steal and corrupt Veiltar power had no defense against this hybrid fighting style. But Kreshtok was not finished. The war leader's ship began to change, mechanical parts extending, like claws as it descended toward the planet's surface. "He's coming down," Captain Kim reported. "He wants to take Hanul directly." "Let him come," Hanul said with quiet determination. "I am not the same child he remembers." The massive ship landed in the crystal fields outside the colony with a crash that shook the ground. Its hatch opened and Devourer warriors poured out, led by Kreshtok himself. They moved toward the colony with weapons that crackled with stolen life energy. Hanul walked out to meet them, accompanied by both families and friends. Dr. Park and Sunmi stood on one side, High Regent Velthara on the other. Jiho and Yunha flanked them, along with Colonel Cho and Captain Kim. Veiltar energy warriors mixed with human soldiers, all united in defense of their shared child. "Surrender the weapon," Kreshtok demanded as he approached. "You cannot stand against us." "You're right," Hanul said calmly. "You cannot stand against us, because you still don't understand what I've become." The young alien raised their hands, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of the violent energy explosions the Devourers expected, gentle light began to flow from Hanul's fingers. It touched the Devourer warriors and their stolen technology began to change. The mechanical implants that had been grafted into their bodies started to dissolve. The corruption that had twisted their minds began to clear. For the first time in years, the Devourers remembered what they had been before their own leaders had turned them into monsters. "How is this possible?" Kreshtok gasped as his own implants began to fail. "I learned something you never could," Hanul replied. "Love doesn't just protect. It heals. It restores. It turns weapons back into people." One by one, the Devourer warriors stopped fighting. As Hanul's healing energy reached them, they remembered their original selves. They had been Veiltar, kidnapped and forced to become living weapons, just as the Devourers had planned to do to Hanul. "This is impossible," Kreshtok roared. "Power comes from taking, not giving." "You're wrong," said Sunmi, stepping forward. "The greatest power comes from giving everything to protect those you love." High Regent Velthara nodded in agreement. "My child has learned what both our species needed to understand. True strength comes not from what we can take, but from what we choose to share." Kreshtok made one final desperate attack, lunging at Hanul with claws extended, but he never reached his target. Dr. Park stepped into his path, followed immediately by Colonel Cho and Captain Kim. Jiho and Yunha moved to shield Hanul from the other side, while Velthara and her warriors formed a protective circle. Facing this wall of determined protectors, Kreshtok finally understood what he was truly fighting. Not a weapon to be captured, but a family willing to die for each other. Hanul's healing light reached Kreshtok last. As the corruption left his body and mind, the former war leader collapsed to his knees, weeping for the first time in decades. "What have I become?" he whispered. "Someone who can choose to be better," Hanul said gently, helping the broken Veiltar to his feet. "Just like I did." In the months that followed, New Sol became the first joint human Veiltar colony. The former Devourers, healed and freed from their corruption, helped build a new kind of society where both species could learn from each other. Hanul grew into the role of cultural ambassador, traveling between worlds to establish more mixed colonies and educational exchanges. Dr. Park and Sunmi were honored as bond parents in Veiltar tradition, while High Regent Velthara became an adoptive grandmother to human children throughout the colonies. The young alien who had once been intended as a weapon had become something far more powerful. Proof that love could overcome any darkness, and that family was not about where you came from, but about who chose to stand with you among the stars. Years later, when other species asked how humans and Veiltar had achieved such perfect cooperation, the answer was always the same. They had learned from a child that the strongest bonds are not forged by fear or force, but by the simple choice to care for each other as family. And in the crystal caves where it all began, Hanul's story was carved in light itself, a reminder that even the darkest intentions could be transformed by love into something beautiful and bright.